Be a year of Hatzlacha, please God. And that we can have, hopefully through the learning, get Aliyah. This week is the Yortzeit of Mr. Salt Heishman. We're actually in Eretz Yisrael now. His neshama should have an Aliyah. I'll share with you just I think a very important thought that I've developed. I've heard the fundamental part of the thought is something I heard from my own Sheshiva, Rabbi Yochanan's wife, Shlita. But very, very important sensitivity that we need to develop within ourselves, hopefully within our children. We have in this week's Parsha the mitzvah of tzedakah, charity. Pasuk says, Kiyev v'cha evyon me'achad achecha. If there will be someone who is destitute from one of your brethren, be'achad sharecha, one of your cities. The Pasuk says, Lo se'ametz es levavcha, should not harden your heart, v'lo sikpotz es yadcha, and you should not close your hand. Ma'achecha avyon, to your destitute brother. Ki pasoach tiftach, you shall open your hand. Va'ave taviteno lo de machsaro, and you shall lend him whatever he needs to make up that which is lacking. We have a mitzvah of tzedakah. And the pasuk then concludes, Ki lo yechdal evyon mikerev haaretz, that destitute people will never cease to exist from the land. And therefore I command you, Pasach tiftach es yadcha lachecha l'niach le'evyoncha ba'artzecha. Therefore I require you to give tzedakah to your poor and destitute of your land. So the Rishonim already discussed this idea. Why does it always have to be poor people? It would seem that poverty is a curse. Poverty is a result of not doing something that is appropriate. So there'll never be a situation where everyone's doing what they need to be doing. So therefore that's why there's always going to be poverty. Why does there always have to be poverty? So I think that's just an understanding. And this is like, I'm commanding to do stuff because there's always going to be poverty. What's the purpose of that? Why is that there? The Rambam brings down that the basis of doing many charitable acts, including burying the dead, gives a whole list of things, really stems from the concept, the fundamental principle, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. That we have to love our fellow man the way we do ourselves, and therefore we have to do these acts of kindness, the acts of because that's something we would want done to us, so we have to do that for others as well. That's the. In this week's parsha, we have another pasuk that says, "V'halachta b'drachav," that you have an obligation to emulate the Almighty, to go in His ways. And the Talmud says that means mahu rachum, just as He's compassion, you have to be compassionate. Just as He gives charity, you got to give charity. Just as He buried Moshe Rabbeinu, we have to bury the dead too, right? Why do you need this whole other verse of a halachta b'drachav if the Rambam tells you that all acts of the fact that we have to be compassionate, kind, that stems from v'ahavta l'recha kamocha? So why do we need this whole new concept of halachta b'drachav, that we have to emulate the Almighty, and that tells us we have to do all these things? We have it already because of ahavta l'recha kamocha. What's being added by this concept of that you have to emulate the Almighty, to go in His ways? And so just to recap over here, there are a couple of questions we're going to be dealing with over here. Number one is, what's this notion? Why is charity, why is poverty something that is always going to be with us? For destitute people will not cease to exist. Why is God creating a system? What, there's a shortage of resources? Always has to be. I think that the Federation puts out, I think like 98% of people that are supportive of charitable gifts comes from like 2% of the people or something like that. Some, there's enough resources to go around if there needs to be to take care that there shouldn't be poor people. So why is it like almost inherent, God's building a system that there has to be poor people? What is the notion that we need this additional mitzvah of halach, the requirement we have to go in God's way, halach v'drachav, to teach us that we have to do all these acts of kindness, where the Rambam learns ahavta l'recha kamocha is the basis for it. There's another question that the commentaries asked you on Rashi, maybe we can address this as well. The verse tells us that Banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem, that you are children of God. We are children of God, and therefore we're not allowed to self-mutilate. Seems to be that there was a custom, behavior, I think even today you see it in some countries, where as an act of mourning, they used to cut themselves, that to express the pain of mourning, they used to cut themselves or pull out their hair. So we have lo sasimu korcha, you're not allowed to make bald spots, and you're not allowed to cut yourself. Lo go to do, you're not allowed to make for dead people. Why? Because banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem, because you are children of God. So Rashi learns that we're children of God, and God does not want His children to look mutilated. So the Ramban asks, then what does it have to do with burial? You shouldn't cut yourself if you just had a bad day on Wall Street and you're upset. You shouldn't mutilate yourself for any reason. Why is the pasuk telling, don't mutilate yourself for when you bury people? Because Banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem, Rashi says, why? Because God doesn't want His children to be mutilated. Then what does it have to do with? There should just be a standard. No matter how upset you get, don't mutilate yourself. What does it have to do with burying somebody? It's the Ramban's question on Rashi. So let's start off and understand something, first of all, concerning the mitzvah of tzedakah. I think that's very important. In Parshas Mishpatim, the Torah talks about also a form of charity, which is talking about lending. That we're supposed to lend not without interest, and you're supposed to do the ani, the evyon, the poor, the destitute. The Rambam has a hierarchy of the way you're supposed to give charity. One of the highest ways to give charity is to lend somebody money. It makes them feel less beholden in terms of that they feel that just still have an option to pay back. It's not like making them feel like a complete hopeless case or never. Pasuk says, "Im kesef talve." If you, simple translation, if you lend money, then you're supposed to lend it. You're supposed to lend without ribbis, without interest. So Rashi brings down a brisa from Tanit Rabbi Shmuel. He says the word "im" usually in the Torah means if. He says there's 3 cases in the Torah where the word "im" doesn't mean if; it means when. Because giving charity, Shmuel says, is not optional. If you have the money, then it's when you give the charity, not if you give the charity, because you don't have a choice in the matter. So it says, therefore, when it says im kesef talve, if you lend money, don't translate it as if, but translate it as when. So what's the obvious question? If the Torah wants to tell you that it doesn't mean that wants to tell you you have to lend or you have to lend money, you have to give charity, then why use the word im? Instead of telling me that this is one of the exceptions, that im doesn't mean if, but it means when, kasher, then don't write the word im, write the word kasher. Just a very simple question. All right, again, let's go through this again. These questions we're asking. Why does there have to be poor people? What's the notion that there has to be poor people? Number two, it's the second question. That if many of the charitable acts, the good deeds that we have to do come from V'ahavta kamocha, why do we need another pasuk that says that you have to emulate God? V'alachta b'drachav, and the Talmud learns from that. That means you have to do charitable acts just like God does. He's compassionate and He's charitable, etc., etc. We can learn it all from V'ahavta kamocha. What is the added wrinkle by saying that we have to emulate from a person? First, it has to emulate God. Rashi says that you shouldn't self-mutilate. And why is it expressed in the case of burying somebody? You can't mutilate because we're connected to God, and we shouldn't mutilate for any reason. Why is it being brought out over there? And the last question is, im kesef talve. Short means, doesn't mean if, it means when. And just write when you lend money. Don't write in a way that's misleading. It seems to say if. There is a interesting fundamental question, I guess gives an insight into all mitzvahs that we do ben adam lechaveiro. We don't have blessings on ben adam lechaveiro mitzvahs. Very interesting. There's no blessing on charity. Right? You don't have a blessing before you put the money in the pushka, before you give money. You don't say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam Shekit Shanu Mitzvosot Tzvanu Al Mitzvahs Tzedakah. We have a bracha Al Natilas Lulav. We have a bracha on all the other mitzvahs that we have. But when it comes to doing charitable acts of kindness, we don't find there's any blessing. So they're showing him the question: why? Why is there no act? Why is there no blessing on all mitzvahs, including tzedakah, let's say? So there's a Rashba says the reason is because it has, on something that doesn't have a limit, it's open-ended, we don't make blessings. We make blessings on finite things, not things that are open-ended. You have to understand what that means. Another answer that's given is because it involves another person and he might turn you down. You might say, here's $10, he said, I don't want it. So you made a bracha levatala. So you can't make a blessing that requires another party. Lulav, the lulav's not going to turn me down. Right? If you need another person to do the mitzvah, he might not, then you made a blessing in vain, therefore they didn't establish blessings. The Rambam says no. The Rambam says that generally in all ben adam lechaveros we don't have blessings. The question is why? What's the logic behind that? Insight, and I think this is probably not the way most of us do charity. But the insight is, the way most of us do charity, I believe, and I just speak for myself, very often does not have the right sensitivities that I think the Torah is mandating. Picture this case. You have the Meshulach who comes to your door, he's collecting for a wedding, for his children, he's collecting for yeshiva, right? So you take out $5, and you say, 1 second. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kiddushanu B'mitzvosav V'tzivanu Al Mitzvah Tzedakah. And then you hand him the $5. How'd you just make him feel? Why doesn't he feel good? You've turned him into your esrog.
Yeah, you cannot use him.
He's now become the object of the mitzvah. Right? It's like, I have to do this because God is instructing me that I need to do Asher Kitchan. Hashem is obligating me, Tzivanu, to do this. And you're the way that I'm fulfilling my obligation. it doesn't connote any sense of compassion, empathy. It's basically, I have an obligation to do this, and I'm going and doing it, and God has commanded me. When the rabbis set the blessings, they understood that the mitzvahs ben adam lechaveru, the purpose of those mitzvahs are that you need to connect with the individual. You have to show him that you are empathetic to his feelings, you sympathize with him, you feel connected with him. By the way, kindness comes from the word kind. Kindred means that there's a connection of my kind. See? That you feel that sense of bonding, you feel that sense of connection. Right? Most of us, whatever we're doing, a guy knocks at the door, you look at the camera, you see the guy, you just can't, you're almost like, just take the money and get out of here. It's not, I know there are people come in, have a drink, have you eaten anything today? There are people that do it that way. Most of us, we don't feel that way. We just can't wait for the guy to leave. That's really not what tzedakah is about. Tzedakah is about making the guy feel that we care about him, that there is that sensitivity. Making a blessing would be the antithesis to the feeling. Because then he would just feel the only reason you're doing it is why? Because God obligated you to do it, not because you care about me. Therefore, the rabbis, in their great wisdom, said by blessings, by ben adam lechaveros, by things like there is no blessing. That's what the Rambam means by ben adam lechaveros, there is no blessing. Where does the Rambam get this idea from? How does he know this? Where do the Chachamim know this, that they cut its concept? All right? How does the Torah couch the mitzvah of tzedakah? Im kesef talveh. If is an option. It says you don't have an option, you have to do it. Well, if you have to do it, then why are you writing it as an option? Because the Torah is telling you how you got to give tzedakah. You have to make that person feel that even if I wasn't obligated to do this, I would still go ahead and do it. Because you know why I'm doing it? I'm doing it because I care about you. The way you have to make him feel is I care about, and I would do it even if I wasn't obligated. You know how the Torah teaches that? Use the word im. Im makes it an option. That's the way you have to make the person feel. Im kesef. What do you mean im? You have to do it. Yeah, that's what it means. You have to do it. Then why write it as an option? We write it as an option because that's the way you need to make the person feel that you're not doing it because you're obligated, you're doing it because you care. That's the way it has to be done. Okay, so that's step number one. Step number one is there is a sensitivity, the way tzedakah, but all mitzvahs of chesed, all mitzvahs of caring, the message has to be that there's a sensitivity, there's a care. So we had a question, right? That could be learned from V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Why do you need another pasuk that says that v'alachta b'drachav, that you have to follow God's ways? So very interesting. In the Hagdama, the introduction to Ein Yaakov, the author took all of the homiletic portions of the Talmud, all the stories, but it's called the Ein Yaakov. In his introduction, he brings down a medrash. We don't really have this medrash. We have the first part of it. We have that says, what's the klal gadol b'Torah? What's the most important fundamental principle of the Torah that everything revolves around? So we all know Rabbi Akiva. What does Rabbi Akiva say? V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. The person has to love their fellow man like he loves himself. So this part is missing from the medrash, but we have in the Hagdama, he brings down this missing medrash. But Ben Azai, a student of Rabbi Akiva, asked the question. He says, well, what if you don't love yourself? What if a person does not have a positive self-image? A person does not feel good about himself. If everything has to generate from that you have to love other people the way you love yourself, what happens if you don't have that self-love? And he goes on and gives a different verse. That's a good question. Telling me that everything is generated from V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, what if a person doesn't have that? Unfortunately, many people don't feel good about themselves. They don't have a good self-image. They don't have that they don't feel that worthy and have a self-value. So how could there be the priority axiom of the Torah is something that is based on a position that doesn't necessarily work. So this is, I think, such an important yesod. One aspect of being charitable and helping people is what I guess today they would call tikkun olam. Right? What does that mean? Is we see people need help, we see things that need to be corrected, so our sense of connection to one another, we can empathize, we have to feel what they're feeling, we should do it in that way, and we try and fill the lack that others have, we try and help them that they should not have that be lacking in that way. We try to do that. But there's another aspect to whether it's doing tzedakah. And you see the ultimate chesed shalem is the ultimate is burying someone. But the recipient, that's why it's called chesed shalem, because the recipient doesn't even owe you anything anymore because the recipient is dead, right? That's burial. Right? There's another whole area, another whole element. Is that the way we connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the highest level of connection comes through emulation. When you emulate God, that's how you get closest to Him. Right? We all know the little kid that wants to put on his father's shoes and father's clothes, or the girl wants to wear. That's the way they feel the closeness. They emulate. There's a whole industry. Madison Avenue understands that. Right? What's that? I want to wear the watch Michael Jordan's wearing. What? I'm going to be able to now dunk the ball the way he dunks because I'm wearing the watch that he's advertising? No, because when you emulate someone, you're copying them. That's how you feel connected. You feel close. The whole idea that aside from the fact that we feel that connection to one another and need to fill, by emulating HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by copying Him, by imitating Him, that's the way we get close. That's what V'halachta b'drachav is. So in addition to, there's an idea of V'ahavta recha kamocha, that we have to, what is the insight into that? Okay, fine, so we have two elements. It tells you an unbelievable thing, and this is the point. We unlock the godliness within us by imitating Him. You know what the solution to someone who doesn't feel good about themselves is? You know how you start feeling good about yourself? You start doing things for others. That unlocking that godliness within us by imitating HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that bringing ourselves closer to Him through that, is the most elevating experience that a person can have. The Rambam said there's no simcha as great as the simcha of helping almanas, aniyim. It's the ultimate simcha that brings a person a tremendous level of fulfillment. So the Ben Azai's question is, V'ahavta recha kamocha, I have to love others. What if I don't love myself? The answer is, by doing this, you'll get to love yourself. That's how you will get to love yourself. That's a tremendous, tremendous message to our children. You want your children to start feeling good about themselves, start teaching them to start doing things for others. The more self-absorbed we become, the less positive we feel about ourselves. The way to break that is to start doing things for other people. Banim atem l'Hashem Elokecha means that there's a genetic connection. I think the reason it's telling it to you in the case of burial, it's true. God doesn't want us to mutilate ourselves. But in the cases of burial, when you're imitating Him, that's where that connection is the strongest. The ultimate chesed you can do for a person is help bury him. The Torah is telling us that when you have that closeness, that connection, you are His son. You're imitating Him. God doesn't want His children to be mutilated, which I think opens up this whole other area, for sure, in those involved in in psychotherapy, and the idea of self-mutilation and cutting and how people don't feel good about themselves, they cut, but it's also an attack. Right? Genetically, if you're cutting yourself, you're attacking the one who created you, who is it, whether it's a parent, whether it's God, But today, society is all about mutilation. I mean, you take a look, just to give an insight, it's just like, whether it's the 45 earrings and the piercings, and it's all about, I think it's just all an expression of how people don't feel that sense of connection and don't feel the, that sense of fulfillment. But the ultimate fulfillment is emulating God. God is telling you, this is the connection. This is to me. You can't be me. You become like me. V'alachta b'drachav. So I think the pshat over here, by the way, just to circle back to the first question, is that it's not a punishment, it's not a curse that they have to be poor people. God needs there to be poor people because that's the way we can strive and grow and become close to Him. It's not a punishment, that there has to be a way through having poor people that we can copy, we can emulate, we can do the tzedakah, we can give those things because that's the way we can get to. Now, why different people are poor and why aren't, for a different time. But God is saying is the system requires that we become close to Him. The only way we can come close to Him is we can emulate Him. God created a world that He doesn't need anything. Right? God doesn't need anything. He created a world. He put human beings into this world for one purpose, is that He can be benevolent. That He can be benevolent. He can do good things for us. He doesn't need it. But He wants to be doing things for us. It means ultimately the essence of God is benevolence. Therefore, the essence of a human being to emulate God is to be benevolent. That's the way we come close. Alachta b'drachav is you emulate Him. So there's two issues. There's one thing, tikkun olam. You have to fix things that are missing, things that are broken, try to fix them. And that's great concept, kindred, kindness, connecting to people, feeling close to people, having that sensitivity. Second level above that, we have to emulate God. We have to become God-like. That's v'alachta b'drachav. So it's two very, very important messages, but I think for us as well, to train ourselves to do things for others, ultimately will build ourselves up and create a very positive feeling about ourselves and for our children too. We live in a society that really becomes less connected, not more connected. I think there was a study that went out, I think, of Stanford, one of these, is that teenagers today are feeling less connected than they've ever felt before. With all the social media, with all the, 3,000 friends on Facebook, it's meaningless. There's no sense of connection. No sense of connection. That's what gives you the feeling of who you are and how good you can feel about yourself is what you're doing for others. And today there's a complete disconnect in terms of completely self-absorbed. So that's something I think we need to work on ourselves, work on, and that's the message of alachta b'drachav, meaning that's how we unlock the godliness within us, that's how we connect to Him.